This isn't a story about growing pot. It's about manipulation, legal battles, and learning to rebuild after betrayal.
I'm Joanna Trojak, a product manager and a consultant helping founders create user centric products and self sustaining startups. I am also the founder of Heart Renew, a self dating app that lets you connect with yourself, not just other people.
Today, we're tackling one of the most difficult and rarely discussed aspects of startup life: co-founder breakups, specifically when they involve narcissistic abuse and manipulation. This isn't your typical "we grew apart" story. This is about recognizing and surviving psychological manipulation in business partnerships. This episode contains discussions of psychological abuse patterns, legal battles, and trauma recovery. If you're currently in a difficult business relationship, please prioritize your safety and consider speaking with a professional. Everyone talks about raising capital. Almost no one talks about losing a co-founder to abuse. Today, we're changing that. According to Harvard Business School research, 65% of startup failures are related to interpersonal tensions between founders, not market or product issues. Yet we rarely discuss this critical aspect of startup life in our entrepreneurial communities. The breakup between co-founders is both personal and professional, a layered grief that most startup advice completely ignores. When you add psychological manipulation into the mix, it becomes one of the most destabilizing experiences a founder can face. I went through this with my first startup, and while it was devastating, it taught me more about boundaries, leadership, red flags, and emotional resilience than any business school course ever could. More importantly, sharing this story might help other founders recognize similar patterns before they became trapped in them. We met on LinkedIn. He approached me directly, older, more experienced, well connected in the startup ecosystem. He took me under his wing, and honestly, I felt lucky to be chosen by someone with his background and network. Our dynamic seemed perfect initially. His experience paired with my fresh perspective, his connections with my technical skills, his confidence with my willingness to learn. For someone new to entrepreneurship, having a seasoned mentor as a co-founder felt like winning the lottery. But I ignored warning signs that seemed obvious in hindsight. His need to control every decision disguised as mentorship, the unspoken power imbalance that grew with each interaction, the lack of clearly defined ownership or decision-making boundaries, the way he could undermine my confidence while appearing supportive, how he gradually positioned himself as the face of the company, slowly erasing my contributions from the narrative. The truth I didn't want to see was that we weren't equal partners. He was systematically creating a dynamic where I would always feel one step behind, always needing his approval. Admiration for someone's experience isn't a foundation to build a business relationship on, especially when that person is actively cultivating your dependence on their validation. Research from the Workplace Bullying Institute shows that startup environments are particularly susceptible to power-based manipulation due to their unstructured nature and lack of oversight. Up to 30% of co-founder relationships with significant age or experience gaps develop unhealthy power dynamics. The relationship didn't sour in one dramatic moment. It was a calculated progressive erosion of my confidence, autonomy, and self-worth. Looking back, with the knowledge I have now, I can identify classic manipulation tactics that I completely missed at the time. Love bombing was how it started. And you know what? Love bombing doesn't have to be in love relationships. It can be in business relationships as well. Initial overwhelming praise and excitement about my ideas, followed by gradual devaluation. He called me a genius, told me he believed in me completely, praised my intelligence and vision. This created an addictive cycle where I craved his approval. And in a way, he knew exactly what to prize because he understood that I'm probably feeling not very confident in those areas. And he thought that he needs to validate me in some way. Information hoarding became routine, keeping me in the dark about key investor conversations and financial details. I discovered important decisions had been made in emails I wasn't included on, learning about changes to our company after they'd already been implemented, despite the fact that I was the CEO of the company. And those decisions should be mine, or at least I should have been informed. I was just learning about them after they were made. Moving goalposts meant my contributions were never quite good enough, with standards constantly shifting. What was excellent work one week became inadequate the next, always with explanations that made me question my own judgment. Triangulation involved creating competition between me and other team members or advisors, and sometimes me and other CEOs in other companies he was actually involved in. I remember him constantly praising another female founder he was working with, someone studying at London School of Economics, a school I had dreamed of attending. He would praise her achievements in front of me the same way he had initially praised me. And to be honest, I was so jealous at that time because I really thought that she is better than me because she studies at this great school. She lives in London and apparently her application had more users. But the reality that I know right now is that she was struggling as well, and her company didn't survive as well, despite her having such a great education. So, in a way, I shouldn't have been jealous of her. I should actually empathize with her, which actually right now I do. Gaslighting made me question my memory, perception, and judgment about decisions we previously agreed on. Conversations I clearly remembered would be denied or reframed to make me seem confused or unreliable. Financial control meant complicating or delaying my access to company resources and information, creating artificial dependence on his goodwill. I had to always ask about paying money to people. He always had to approve it, despite the fact that I was the CEO and I should approve it. Public praise, private devaluation was perhaps the most confusing pattern, building me up in public settings while systematically tearing me down in private conversations. So we were somewhere in public, for instance, doing a webinar or maybe doing an interview, he would always praise me that I'm the genius of this company. I'm so great. But then in private, when we were alone, he would call me stupid. What felt like growing pains or founder tension was actually a systematic campaign to diminish my sense of ownership and confidence. Dr. Ramani Dosal, an expert on narcissism and professional relationships, notes that the warning signs are often disguised as high standards or business mentorship in startup environments where inexperienced founders are particularly vulnerable. Understanding why these tactics are so effective requires looking at how our brains respond to intermittent reinforcement and psychological manipulation. When someone alternates between praise and criticism unpredictably, it creates what psychologists call trauma bonding, powerful psychological attachment that's actually strengthening than by the abuse. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, research in The Body Keeps the Score, explains how our nervous systems become dysregulated by this kind of treatment. Your body starts living in a state of hypervigilance, constantly scanning for signs of approval or disapproval from the manipulated person. And to be honest, I wonder how could I even live like that? Like constantly think, he's not going to like this. I don't know if he's going to praise me. Oh, I did it like really badly. It's so stupid right now. The intermittent reinforcement schedules, sometimes getting praise, sometimes getting criticism, never knowing which, is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. Your brain becomes addicted to the dopamine hit of their approval, making it incredibly difficult to see the relationship clearly or extract yourself from it. This is why intelligent, capable people can become trapped in those dynamics. It's not about weakness or naivete. It's about how human psychology responds to sophisticated manipulation tactics. That for anyone listening who might be in similar situation, let me share the red flags that I now know to watch for in business partnerships. When disengaging feels dangerous rather than just uncomfortable, healthy business partnerships can handle conflict and differing opinions. If expressing disagreement makes you feel afraid of retaliation or punishment, it's a serious warning sign. When you're constantly walking on eggshells, modifying your natural communication style to avoid triggering your partner's anger or disappointment. When you find yourself isolated from other advisors, mentors, or supporters, manipulative partners often work to cut you off from outside perspective that might help you see the situation more clearly. When your contributions are constantly minimized, while theirs are amplified, especially in front of others. When you're doing most of the actual work, but they're receiving most of the credit and recognition. When financial information becomes mysteriously complicated or inaccessible to you, despite your equal partnership status. When you start doubting your own memories, perceptions, and judgment about business decisions. These patterns often develop gradually, which is why they're so difficult to recognize while you're in them. The final confrontation came when I made a business decision without what he deemed proper consultation. His response wasn't professional disagreement, it was rage that felt completely disproportionate to the situation. In that moment, the mask slipped completely. I realized that this was never about building something together. It was about control. It was about maintaining a dynamic where he held all the power and I remained dependent on his approval and resources. For the first time in our partnership, I stood my ground and refused to back down. I named the manipulation I was seeing. That's when the threats began. Legal threats, threats to my reputation, threats to prevent me from working in the industry. This pattern matches what psychologists call narcissistic injury. When someone with narcissistic traits has the sense of superiority challenged, it triggers rage and revenge tactics. So, how dare you say that this is manipulation? How dare you not agree with me? Which, to be honest, for me, someone who's not narcissistic in nature, seems stupid, especially after I've been through this. So Greg Malkin's research shows that when narcissistic business partners face rejection or boundary setting, they often resort to legal intimidation as both punishment and means to maintain control long after the legal proceedings over our startup that essentially no longer exists has ended. I had to fight for my name, my work, and my right to move forward. Was perhaps the most psychologically damaging part of the entire experience. And to be honest, I am relieved that it ended, but because it was extremely difficult, that I had to fight for myself. But right now, I'm much stronger, and every time I see even the tiny red flag in someone, I just leave. When you leave an abusive business relationship, you might expect it to end there. But narcissistic individuals often use the legal system as a weapon to continue the abuse. And sure, he did. He actually summoned me for the unexpected board meetings. He asked me strange questions like why I have removed him from the company's bank account, why I have removed him from Facebook, which, to be honest, it was strange because he wanted to leave. But then he didn't want to leave. The goal isn't necessarily to win, it's to drain your resources, energy, and spirit while maintaining control over your life. And sure, he did it. The legal battle forces you to relieve the trauma repeatedly while spending money you may not have on a fight you never wanted. It's designed to be punishment for daring to live and establish boundaries. It's where having proper documentation from the beginning becomes crucial. Most founders don't think to document decision-making processes, contribution records, or communication patterns when relationships are good. But in hindsight, I wish I had maintained detailed records of my work, our agreements, and the evolution of our partnership dynamics. And currently, I do have a proper record. So next time I will be prepared if I have a similar situation. But to be honest, I hope that I won't. Because currently, with just one red flag, I'm just leaving someone and I'm not looking back. The impact of narcissistic abuse in business partnerships extends far beyond the immediate relationships. According to research from the Founder Mental Health Project, founders who experience manipulative co-founder relationships report several long-term effects. 73% report significant damage to their professional identity and self-confidence that persisted more than a year after the relationship ended. You start to doubt your own capabilities, judgment, and worthiness of success. 58% report being isolated from key business relationship as part of the control tactics, making it harder to rebuild professionally. 47% report the legal proceedings lasted longer than the actual business partnerships, creating ongoing trauma and financial drain. 26% of startup founders over-report experiencing psychological abuse from a co-founder, suggesting this is much more common problem than our industry acknowledges. The ripple effects include difficulty trusting future business partners, second-guessing your own decisions, and carrying trauma responses into new professional relationships. And this is in fact true for me, because right now I have a difficulty with trusting people. I have to check them. And recently, I had to use my lawyer again because someone was actually again cheating on me. But this time, I didn't waited 5 years. I did that immediately. I immediately put that boundary and immediately fought for my rights, which in hindsight is good. But the previous experience actually told me that. And I think there's still some residual trauma after that situation. Recovery from this kind of experience requires specific strategies different from general business advice about co-founder conflicts. Here's what I've learned about healing and rebuilding those past months. Trust your instincts over authority. Experience and connection matter, but not more than your intuition. That an easy feeling isn't imposter syndrome. It's your internal alarm system working correctly. I now ask myself, do I feel smaller or larger after interactions with this person? Am I afraid to share opposing viewpoints? Do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells? And even in the situations that are not strictly narcissistic, they are just with people, I'm asking myself, okay, so what is going on here? Okay, do I feel happy? Is there something wrong? Maybe there's something wrong. I actually trying to pause and discern if it's the good interaction. Document everything from day one. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're professional. Get everything in writing, create paper trails for all decisions, back up communications externally, and detail your contributions consistently. The American Bar Association notes that contemporaneous documentation is often the determining factor in legal outcomes. And in fact, currently, I do try to document everything and make notes of things that happened. Create formal structure immediately. An imbalanced co-founder relationship thrives in isolation and informality. I know now to insist on proper board structure with independent members, regular governance meetings, clear reporting structures, and external advisors who know both founders separately. And in fact, currently, when I was working on one project for a client, when they asked me to do something that was legally dubious, I said no, and I insisted on saying no, despite the fact they were trying to convince me. Recognize that recovery takes time and support. The psychological impact of narcissistic abuse is real and requires specialized treatment. Therapy specifically for narcissistic abuse recovery is different from general counseling. Rebuilding your professional identity separate from the narrative takes time. Learning to trust your judgment again is the process. And in fact, currently I am in this stage of rebuilding. And yeah, I have recognized that currently I am less reactive, I am less vigilant, I'm more relaxed. And I realized that I'm actually doing a really great job on my own. And to be honest, even better than him. If I could go back, I would have created what I call a co-founder prenup, a comprehensive agreement addressing potential relationship breakdown before it happens. This should include vesting schedule with clear periods to ensure equity is earned over time, not granted upfront. Clear performance expectations and metrics for what constitutes pulling your weight. Specific conflict resolution processes with step-by-step protocols for deadlocks. Determined exit mechanisms including buyout processes and departure procedures. Detailed intellectual property ownership designations. Communication expectations including required check-ins and transparency standards. Role definitions with specific decision rights to each founder. According to Y Combinator partner Michael Siebel, the time to have hard conversations is when everyone still likes each other. Yet fewer than 40% of founding team have these discussions before launching. Understanding the typical cycle of narcissistic abuse in business partnerships can help founders recognize it earlier. Phase 2. Idealization. The grooming involves excessive praise for your ideas, presenting themselves as the perfect mentor, moving the relationship forward unusually quickly, promises of access to networks and resources, and creating a sense that you're special and chosen. To be honest, if you think that a relationship with this person that actually showed up in your life and wants to do business with you is really similar to the love bombing in a love relationship, you should run. Because everything that could happen in the love relationship when you say, you're amazing, you're so beautiful, or you're doing everything perfectly, I'm so happy to be with you. And they're like moving the relationship really quickly, it means that this person is probably a narcissist and it's going to be dangerous. When the narcissists actually establish themselves and they make sure that, yeah, you are in this high period of this relationship and you truly feel special and chosen, and yeah, they are going to do everything for you. Here comes phase 2, the evaluation, the control, which includes subtle criticism that gradually increases, withholding information or resources, taking credit for your contributions, triangulation with other team members or advisors, making unliteral decisions while maintaining plausible deniability, and gaslighting about previous discussions. So right now, you're actually not perfect anymore in their eyes. So when in the first phase they praised you, no, you're just an idiot. And they will say, no, I actually don't love this presentation. I think that you didn't know what you are doing. So after this first phase, when you were feeling, oh my God, this person really understands me and wants to give me all those things, you feel like, wait a second. So right now I have to work for the approval. And here comes phase 3, discard, the crisis. Involves creating situations that force conflict, positioning us as unstable or incompetent, threatening legal action or reputation damage, attempting to cut you out of the company, help to build, and attracting shared connections to control the narrative. When they actually realize that, yeah, they devalued you, they're above you, they don't need you anymore. So go away. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking free from narcissistic abuse and actually making sure that you're not going to be part of another such situation. This issue reflects broader problems in startup culture that makes founders vulnerable to manipulation. The mythology of the visionary founder creates power imbalances. The emphasis on moving fast and taking risks can override careful relationship vetting. The informal nature of early stage companies provides cover for inappropriate behaviors. The networking heavy nature of the startup ecosystem means that manipulative individuals can leverage reputation and connections as weapons. The high stress, high stakes environment normalizes extreme behavior that would be clearly inappropriate in other contexts. We need to start having more honest conversations about these dynamics. Founder abuse is real, it's common, and it's devastating not just to individuals but to the innovative potential of our entire ecosystem. If you're currently in a situation that sounds similar to what I've described, here are immediate steps to consider. Start documenting everything now. Even if you hope things improve, which usually they don't, I can say something about that. Having records protects you. Reconnect with advisors, mentors, or colleagues you may have been isolated from. Outside perspectives are crucial. Consult with an attorney who specializes in startup law, not just general business law. Many offer initial consultations that then help you understand your position. Consider whether you have access to your own financial resources if you need to leave quickly. Talk through a therapist's experience with narcissistic abuse, not just general business counseling. The psychological dynamics are specific and require specialized understanding. Remember that leaving an abusive business relationship isn't a failure, it's courage. And brace yourself for a difficult journey because they're not going to make it easy for you to leave. But you made the first step. You decided to leave. Recovering from narcissistic abuse in business partnerships requires rebuilding both professionally and personally. Professional recovery means rebuilding your network from one relationship at a time, creating your own narrative about what happened without getting defensive if overly detailed, focusing on your future work rather than constantly explaining the past. Starting small with new projects to rebuild confidence in your abilities. Personal recovery involves healing the psychological wounds through specialized therapy, learning to trust your own judgment again, rebuilding your sense of self separate from this assessment of you, understanding that their behavior reflects their pathology, not your worth. The goal isn't to become permanently suspicious of all business relationships, but to develop healthy skepticism and proper vetting processes as standard practice. I want to be transparent about the legal aspect because they're rarely discussed. Fighting legal battles with narcissistic former partners often involves expensive legal fees that can drain your resources while they make more funding available. Prolonged timelines designed to exhaust you emotionally and financially. Complex psychological dynamics where the legal system becomes another arena for abuse. The challenge of explaining psychological manipulation to legal professionals who may not understand these patterns. The ongoing trauma of being forced to interact with your abuser through legal proceedings. This is why prevention through proper documentation of formal structures from the beginning is so crucial. It's much easier to protect yourself proactively than to seek justice retroactively. One of the most healing aspects of recovery has been connecting with other founders who have experienced similar situations. The startup world rarely talks about these experiences, leaving each person to feel isolated and alone in their trauma. There are growing networks of founder support groups specifically for survivors of abusive business relationships. These communities provide both practical advice about legal strategies and emotional support from people who truly understand the experience. Professional resources are also becoming more available, including therapists who specialize in narcissistic abuse recovery, attorneys who experience of founder disputes, and career coaches who understand the unique challenges of rebuilding after professional abuse. I want to end with this truth. Narcissistic co-founder relationship doesn't define your capabilities. It isn't evidence of your weakness or naivete. If anything, it's a testament of your optimism, trust, and collaborative spirit, qualities that make great founders. Your value was never determined by the assessment. Your ideas didn't become worthless because they said so. Your potential doesn't diminish because someone tried to dim your light. I'm still in the midst of the recovery from that legal battle. It ended a few months ago, but I'm still working on disentangle my sense of self from the distorted mirror they held up. But I know this, their power was always an illusion built on manipulation. My interesting worth and capabilities remain intact. Whatever I build next, whether it's another company, a project, or simply a healthier relationship with myself, it will be built on a foundation of hard-won wisdom. Before I wrap up this episode, I want to tell you about something that I have recently experienced regarding the situation, which actually I think will help you understand that at some point you are actually healed. So, you see, recently I decided to check out their LinkedIn profile. Sometimes I do that to just, observe what they're doing. And this time I looked at their profile completely different. It was like I've seen this profile for the first time properly, not through the lens of my lack of self-confidence, not through the lens of my lack of experience and other things. I actually saw it as an experienced startup founder who has her skills, who has her talents, and who has her intelligence, obviously. And I looked at it and I've realized that it's not so good. And from his profile, you can immediately understand that he's trouble. First of all, the whole profile was written in English and it was giving this vibe of a Fortune 500 CEO that is so innovative. He's so creative. He's doing such an amazing things. But when you looked at the details, you realize that he is not a 500 Fortune CEO because, first of all, his spelling is incorrect. He had a funny spelling of limitations. So his spelling was an issue. His lack of understanding of English grammar, for instance, instead of I was executing something, I was executing a project, he said I was executed. And those are basic grammar mistakes that a student in primary school knows about, and he didn't. At least even if he has problems with English, he didn't bother to check it with ChatGPT or with other people to make sure that the spelling and grammar in English is correct on his LinkedIn profile, which is his professional identity. The other thing was that his profile lacked concrete information. What he actually did, what he actually executed, what are his metrics, with what he helped. They were like things that were like a rubbish that he couldn't even understand what he was doing. And he has a long career. So in his long career, he should have a lot of successes, but it wasn't visible from his profile, to be honest. So also, apart from the visible lack of professionalism on his LinkedIn profile, I've noticed that he lost some recommendations he had on his profile. Because I remember when I met him, he had at least 2-3 recommendations from some business owners. And I looked on this profile and I've seen that those recommendations are missing. So probably, maybe he removed them, but it's unlikely. Maybe those people actually removed themselves from LinkedIn, which also is unlikely because they were business owners. But the probable is that they probably revoked that recommendation or blocked him, despite the fact that previously they praised him in those recommendations. So this situation actually was very healing and cathartic for me because I realized that I was never a problem. And the signs were there all along. And actually, he was a corporate clown, and he will always be. I will learn, I will move on, I will heal, I will do another project, some of them probably successful, and he will still be the same sad, pathetic person. So I wanted to tell you about it because this is kind of the end of this saga. I've realized that I wasn't the problem. He was. And I've seen him for the first time as a person he actually is. That he wasn't even valuable. He's not even professional. He doesn't know how to spell things correctly in English. Especially on a LinkedIn profile, which is your fucking, I'm sorry for swearing, your fucking business and professional identity. And you should put your best foot forward. Remember, surviving abuse takes strength. Speaking about it takes courage. And building again after a betrayal takes a level of resilience that should be celebrated, not hidden. If you're struggling with a similar situation, you're not alone. Trust your instincts, seek support, and know that your story doesn't end with that chapter. This is Founder Unfiltered. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.